Hello, fans, friends, and fam. Welcome to the Goshen Theater Drama Club Table Talk for this week. I'm your host, Amber Burgess. Welcome. We're so excited that you're here with us. With us today, our panelists, Miss Katie. Katie, welcome.
Hello, friends.
Our regular panelist, Mr. Paul Regano. Paul, how are you?
Well, glad to be here.
Trial basis, regular panelist, trial basis. And our special guest today, Randa Meierhenry. Randa, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Today, our episode is dedicated to one of our regional theater artists, Miss Randa Meierhenry. We're going to talk about her journey, how she got where she is, like what her value system, her tax filing status. We briefly discussed that before we started taping. But we're going to be talking to Randa about her journey as an artist, and maybe you guys will relate a little bit to some of the things that she has gone through and where she has arrived at now. Also, if you haven't joined us before we get into the meat of our regular episode, we always have a little hot take, or we take one of your questions. This week's hot take comes to us from Miss Katie, and I am a big fan, Miss Katie, of this week's hot take.
All right, friends, here we go. Would you rather be able to headline in your dream role on Broadway, or Paul, for you, if you don't want to act, then you get to music direct your favorite show, get to talk to the choreographer, whatever you want to do. You get that top billing, and you never get to work again professionally after that show closes, or you never make it to Broadway, but you have a long-lasting career doing what you love.
But what if the show never closes?
It has to close. It's like a 3-night engagement, okay. Randa.
What?
3-night.
Katie,
3 weeks. 3 weeks. Fine. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Fine.
Okay.
I have one other.
All right, fine. 3 months. Better?
Well, if it's intended for like a limited engagement, like you just.
Okay, limited engagement.
Right.
There you go.
Okay.
I have one question. In this scenario, has my career been the same? Do I already keep the Broadway credits that I have?
Yeah, sure. Whatever you've done up until that point is still the same, but it's like you either make it on Broadway and you headline and you get the dream thing that you wanted and you never get to do anything ever again, or you get to keep doing what you love, but you never get to be on Broadway again.
Katie, can I keep my Broadway credits?
Sure, girl. You keep whatever you want.
Awesome. Because I was pulled up on stage during Hair on Broadway. So.
As you do.
I mean, that's my only Broadway credit. 90 seconds of fame.
That means that you've performed on more Broadway stages than I have.
Boom. Yes. I love it. I'll go first.
All right, go for it, Amber.
I think I already made this choice, actually. Not that anybody has ever arrived on my doorstep and said, Amber, here we go. You're going to play dream role, which who even knows what that even means at this point? Because there are so many roles that like I would have loved to play when I was younger, or that like if there was like a limited 3-month engagement of me playing Annie, I might take it. But in general, I think that there is a lot of value in having a regional theater career and being able to boots on the ground affect the artistic community. I feel like Broadway is a little bit inaccessible for a lot of people, and because it's distance, cost, etc. And also it's sort of, there's that level of prestige between the plebeians, the muggles, and the Broadway. So there's at least this perceived barrier there. So I like being accessible, and I like being able to, be a mentor and do that stuff, create educational programs and all that. I think that would be more challenging on Broadway. So I'm going to go with have the lifelong career. That's my choice, I think. Who wants to go next? Paul, what about you?
Gosh, it seems like the we can cut all this deliberation out in post, right?
no one is going to actually enforce this. It's not like
Broadway's not going to cut us off if we say, like, you know what, we're good without it. It's okay.
the king of Broadway isn't going to be like, it has been pronounced on the table talk.
Oregano is out.
Yeah, I think it would probably have to be the same answer for me, and that's just because I think we've said this before on the table talks, but it's worth repeating, is that people tell you all the time in this business, if you can do anything else, go do it. And I can't. So to blow it all on one 3-week engagement and then either just not do anything, not have anything to do for the rest of my life, or suffer at something that I'm bad at or hate, just sounds like a miserable existence, just to always get to look back and go, when I did play John Adams in 1776 on Broadway for 3 weeks, good times. So, and the work I'm doing right now, because Broadway is shut down, you know, I'm still finding things to do in the theater that fulfill me, and that's never going to go away. There's never going to be a situation where I can't find fulfillment in the theater if Broadway wasn't available. So I'm afraid I have to be boring and agree with Amber. Not that Amber is boring.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
No conflict in the episode if I agree. Randa, you have to take the other option.
That's not how this works, Paul. You don't get
There are
to
no
pick for
dictated
Randa.
answers.
No.
I am going to side with the majority because especially during this pandemic, I've found that, oh my gosh, if I can't perform, it's a sad life. So I would say I would forego the Broadway engagement to be a working actor for the rest of my life.
I kind of figured that would be all of our answers, to be honest, just because I know everybody involved. But yeah, I agree. In college, I had that sit down with myself and decided, like, what is success to me? And my success is being able to do what I love, no matter where it might be. So I don't need Broadway to feel successful. I don't need Broadway to be able to do what I love. And so I came up with that answer a long time ago.
I have a weird thing, though. Here's another odd sort of quirk. So that whole like definition of success thing, like how when you feel successful, sometimes even when you're experiencing outside success, you don't feel successful. And it's interesting to me that at times in my life when I have been at my most outside successful, I have not felt like a success. I have felt as if there was something more that I should be doing, and like I didn't take the time to appreciate what I had when I had it. And not that I ever like didn't love being an actor, but I've actually found in the theater that I feel truly fulfilled and successful when I'm helping other people or creating moments of beauty with others. So that teamwork aspect and that like helping other people discover things that I discovered, like a love for the things that I love, that's way better to me than standing on stage and waving my arms and yelling or whatever, you know, like, not that that's like my style, my acting style. Some may disagree, but no, like my definition of success, I have felt so much more successful being able to help local artists and being a part of like educational programming than I ever did just performing. Because I can still perform. I mean, not right now. But if I choose to, I can still do that. I just also get to support other people's art. And I think, you know, you get fed that line that there's one definition of success, and it's not true. You're not going to feel successful just because someone else tells you that you should feel successful.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that outside success and inside success. That's a really good way to put it. I was doing a workshop years ago with the incredible actor Catherine Grody, and she talked about when she was doing, I believe it was Endgame on Broadway, Beckett on Broadway, and she was like, this is what I've always told myself. This is what I want. And it was opening night, and they were taking their curtain call, and all she could think was, this is it?
Yep.
And yeah.
I have a good friend, well, an acquaintance friend, someone I very much enjoy, who was on Broadway and playing a title character in a Broadway show and wanted to be with their dog and baby and just kept thinking about the commute. Like, wow, I really want to be with my community. I don't necessarily want this version of success. So, you know, this is what I always wanted. Yeah. It's an interesting conundrum. And I think we kind of get, as a young person, I know I definitely got the idea that like, I will go to the Prince of Broadway and I will say hello, and the hush will fall over the city and they'll say, she arrived. And then I will be on the Broadway. And then eventually I'll die on stage playing Hamlet. And the books will be written about how amazing I am. But that hasn't happened yet, one. And it doesn't have to. I think as we mature, we get more mature visions and versions of success, but it's because we didn't give up when we were kids. So don't give up. Inspiration for your Wednesday or Thursday, whatever day it is that this will get uploaded. Oh my goodness. That was a great hot take, Katie. I feel like Katie should maybe come up with hot takes.
Oh gosh, don't put that on me. Responsibility, what's that? Sorry. I'll think of some more.
Yeah, think of some just for funsies. And again, if you guys have other questions, we've got a few audience questions that we'll probably start fielding next week. But this hot take was too good not to do this week. But yeah, if you guys have comments or questions, or if you have an answer to this question, or if you're, you know, from the opposing team and you would rather do the 3-week Broadway engagement and then be an accountant, please let us know in the comments below or comment on Facebook if you would. Today's episode is dedicated to an interview of a beautiful person, an incredible performer, Randa Meierhenry. I'll tell you guys a little bit about Randa. Yep, it's you, Randa. I met Randa at Midwest Theater Association conference, and she was so talented that I thought I wouldn't get her. Yeah. You came out, I was like, well, there she is, but there she goes, because she's too talented. Everybody will snatch her up. That's what happens at those like big cattle call auditions. So I was sitting in the audience with like 20 other theater companies, and we were seeing just a cavalcade of people. And it was the same weekend that we met Akira. So Akira and Randa both came into my life on the same weekend. I was laboring under a very fortunate planet during that conference. So saw Randa, read her resume, thought she's a great fit, and I could tell from like the stuff on your resume that you weren't just a theater zombie. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that as we go through today. But one of the cool parts was that Randa, when she came out on stage, really knew herself and really knew her voice and really knew who she was as a performer. And she was a young performer at the time. I think you were 20 something, young enough to be my kid, 22, 23.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But she's really had a good sense of self. So I think that's one of the things that we try to cultivate in Drama Club is really knowing who you are and what you want to do. And Randa was a master of that even at 22. So we're going to open it up to questions. I think we'll start with Randa. Why don't you just give us like a brief overview of where you went to school, what your major was, and then tell us a little bit about some just career highlights, like just bullet points, and then we'll get into some specific questions. Take it away.
All right. Well, I'm originally from Lincoln, Nebraska. I went to a tiny high school with a really awesome choir director and theater director who were very encouraging and made me want to go do that in college. So I studied vocal performance and theater. I double majored at a tiny school called Simpson College in Indianola, Iowa, and it was exhausting. And then I left college and I did a bunch of summer stock gigs while I was there, and eventually found myself to Round Barn with Amber, Katie, and Paul. And most recently, I joined the cast of the national tour of Fiddler on the Roof, which is my personal favorite career highlight, but I don't know. Other people could say other things.
There have been a lot of highlights. I mean, there's a lot of performances that I've seen you in that were great. So I didn't get to see Fiddler yet. Well, when it's off hiatus and you guys come to the Morris, which I'm sure you will, because it was scheduled to come to the Morris. Yeah, so I'm sure you will. We'll come see you and then kidnap you away for a drink or dinner. We'll go to Fiddler's Hearth, which I don't think you've ever been to. Fiddler's Hearth is right across the street from the Morris. It's incredible. It's a great little Irish pub.
Can't wait.
I can't either. Go away, COVID. Get out of here.
I'm going to book my plane ticket to South Bend.
Yes, please. That'd be so fun. I know a place you can stay. So now we're going to open it up to questions. I think we're going to start with Miss Katie. Katie, what is your big question for Randa?
Well, as it's already been stated, Randa is one of the most talented humans I know, and she's like one of the best people to work with. Not a joke. But Randa, I know that you have a lot of different, besides performing-based special skills. Like we've talked about your lighting skills and your set skills and all that. Like, but I know you have a really special one on your resume, I do believe, called A Boy in the Box.
Oh my gosh.
And first, I'd like to just have a segment where you explain that. But I'd also like to hear what other special skills you have that we haven't talked about having you on here.
Gosh. Okay, so that comes from my sister, who is maybe the funniest person that I know. And I don't know how she came up with this, but one day she was just like talking with her mouth closed, and she called it her impersonation of a child trapped in a box. So now I will do it for you.
Daddy, Hank, I'm stuck in a box and I can't get out. Just amazing. Every time I hear it, every time.
I have that on my resume, and no one has ever asked me to do it.
I would literally ask you every time you came into the room. Every time I'd ask for it.
When we were doing Mermaid, Mia and Caitlin would ask me to do it every day. Eventually, they started doing it too. They were very good at it by the end of the show, which was impressive. What other special skills? Oh, I can make a water drop sound, which I think you've heard because I just like do it randomly. That's all it is. Nothing too special. I play lots of instruments. There was actually a show that I did just before I came to Round Barn where the director said offhand, she was like, if you want, you can like pick up a harmonica and like try to learn it for this little part, or you can fake it. It's not a big deal. I was like, I'm going to learn how to play the harmonica. And I did it. And now that's all my special skills too.
Very good. Very good.
That's awesome. I think like as a casting director, I love to see quirky special skills. And I always have a quirky special skill on my resume. And they've actually like gotten some traction for me occasionally. I have a friend who had fencing on his resume, and he grew up on a farm in Rolla, North Dakota. And people, when they would ask him, okay, well, how many years have you done fencing? And he'd say, well, all my life. My dad used to make me put up the barbed wire and the electric every winter so that he could like set up this joke because he did fencing, but not the kind you're thinking of.
That is impeccable.
Yes.
I love that.
But he would wait for people to be like, can you tell us about your fencing experience? And he'd be like, yes, I can. Cha-ching. But yeah, it's always fun to have something on your resume, even if it's like great at telling dad jokes. I've seen that one on a resume before. Or pun master, and just have a couple things in the tank ready to go as like a way to show your personality. That's really fun. But yeah, I love a quirky resume point. Does anybody else have a quirky resume point? Katie, do you have one on your resume?
Oh, I think like the quirkiest I have is like spinning flags and rifles from like Color Guard and Winter Guard. And then like, I don't know, I have driving a car because some people like to know that you can drive.
Well, if you can drive a stick shift, this is actually really important in film. This is like, I've done some film, as you guys might know, but I could drive a stick shift. So there were a couple gigs that I got because I could drive a stick shift, specifically as an extra in a historic documentary because they had a historic car that they obviously didn't have automatic transmission. So because I could drive a stick shift, I was an extra in this film. So yeah, it's important for that kind of stuff. As for stage stuff, not as much. Like, can you pretend to drive a car? Is probably more important for stage stuff. Paul, what kind of quirky stuff do you have on your resume?
I think under instruments played, I list kazoo. That's one of them. Which I've also realized many people don't know how to play, which is hilarious to me.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, here's one that actually you gave me, Amber.
Yeah.
On all my resumes, professional, musical, performance, anything, I list that I am Time Magazine's 2006 Person of the Year.
Yes, because we all are.
Because that year, the Person of the Year was you. That was right as YouTube was getting big, and it was all about users and
Yep,
user
it was a
content.
mirror. The cover was a mirror.
Yeah.
2006 Time Magazine Person of the Year. My fake bio has that in it, and Tony winner.
That's right.
Because I worked for Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park the year the Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park won the Regional Theater Tony. So Oscar nominated because I was an extra in Traffic. Golden Globe winner because I was an extra in Traffic. So yeah, my fake resume, or like the highest stuff that I could possibly put, is those things. They're not lies, but they're not necessarily, like, I was not instrumental in any of those things, but it's fun. That's the fake version of my bio. So yeah, I love that one. I have one quirky resume point, and it's actually gotten me a few callbacks for a specific show, and I think it's so weird. But I have Glynis John's impersonation as the last thing on my resume, because she's the mom in Mary Poppins, and I did a one-woman Mary Poppins cabaret. It was like a 20-minute Mary Poppins. It was back in like 2001 or 2, like 1,000 years ago. But I kind of discovered that I had this Glynis John's impersonation in the can. So I put it on my resume. It gets me called back for Singing in the Rain. Isn't that odd? But it's always Lena Lamont. So people, because I can manipulate my voice.
Voice thing, yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's a pretty cogent through line like from Lena Lamont to Glynis John's. like it's not dissimilar.
All I want now is to see Glynis John's play Lena Lamont.
Oh my gosh. Did you guys know, fun fact, I know this is like the nerd soapbox that you guys make fun of us for and why our episodes are so long. But the woman who played Lena Lamont did her own singing and did some of Debbie Reynolds' singing in the original Singing in the Rain.
Wow.
Yeah, when it's a movie about how Debbie Reynolds does the singing. It's ironic. You could kind of tell too in the silent sections where like the breaths line up. I'm like, that's really good sync. No, that's just her. She's got a beautiful voice. Awesome. That was super fun, Katie. What a great question. Paul, what's your question for Randa?
I was thinking, because like we've said before, Randa is so multi-talented, and I was like, how do we work all of the amazing things that she does and that she brings to the table into a question? And ultimately, I was hoping that that other people would ask the questions about her other disciplines, and I'm going to stick to Randa as a performer, because I've seen you do many things. I've seen you play in Fiddler on the Roof. I saw you play a poor Jew in turn of the century Russia in the Shtetl. I've seen you as a young woman perpetually engaged in the 1920s, 30s. You've played a nun, you've played a mermaid, things that are vastly different from your life experience. And I know that when I'm looking at if I was to I'm so articulate this morning.
Yeah.
Try not to be impressed. there are very few roles, I think, and I think very highly of you, but there are very few roles that I look at that I don't think there is a world in which you could conceivably play them in a way that would not make people be like, why is she playing the blacksmith or whatever? So my question is, coming from your own experience, how do you find that? What is your process? How do you get to that place where you are so believable and so rooted in truth in someone whose truth is so different from your own?
I'm gonna give away all my secrets here. So I had a director once. Her name is Becky Boson. She was incredible, and this was very early in my career. And she said this, and I have held on to it ever since. But she says, every character that you play is you plus something minus something. That way you're always rooted in truth. So if I'm about to play an old woman, that's me plus age minus something else. I don't know. I would have to maybe dig a little deeper for that. But I think that it's important to keep every character rooted in truth. And I think that that is the best way for you to at least create a foundation of a character.
And okay, so follow up.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk more about rooted in truth? Because I think there are times that, there are different ways to look at that. Like a method actor might say, like, it has to be rooted in truth. I have to become that person. I have to really fill my life with what that person's life would be like. And then there are people who say, I have to find the objective truths about this character, on the other side, the sort of more British style of acting, and say, I'm going to create a facade that I can then step into. I
think you're kind of going into like different, like Stanislavski versus what's the other one? Why can't I think of the other one? Stanislavski and what is it?
Like Stella Adler was after Stanislavski, and she kind of followed that. Well, she, I guess, kind of followed Meisner, right? God, I haven't studied.
Meisner, that's what I'm thinking of. Stanislavski and Meisner. I never learned either of those methods exclusively. We were taught them in our acting classes in my undergrad. Maybe I'll talk about my undergrad for a little bit. So because I double majored in music and theater, my theater degree was just an overall theater degree. So I took 2 acting classes, 2 directing classes, a butt ton of design classes, and a bunch of history classes. And then I took a bunch of music history classes and theory and vocal pedagogy, all that stuff. And so I think that eventually I will go to grad school to hone in my acting knowledge, only because I never had specific training on either of those methods. So the method that I use is something that I've just kind of created myself. And I like to take different things that different directors have told me and kind of like make this ball of whatever and keep it close to my heart and trying to remember that when I'm creating a character. So I don't have a specific method. I know that some people are like, I create an animal that goes with this character and that's how I embody it. And I'm like, cool, good for you. I'm okay without that. But like to each person, I think every method is valid and every method should be your own.
Absolutely. I think also it makes you more directable to not be a proponent of a specific method. And like as a director, I use a lot of Chekhov, which you guys know, or you don't know that it's Chekhov, but I talk about it a lot because I like that it's non-emotional and it lives in the body, because I think we get in our heads a lot as performers. So that's something that works for me. So as a director, I found success working with actors using that method, but I have never worked with an actor who is a 100% Chekhov actor. I don't think you can be. Like, it's just like a shortcut to get to where you need things to be. as a performer. I think that's really smart though. Like, and I would also say like learning acting is like learning painting. You can learn techniques and methods, just like singing. You can learn singing techniques and singing methods. And there is a healthful way to sing. We all have issues with like how to be healthful, just like there's a healthful way for your body to be when you're acting, which is another thing I like about Chekhov. But I think above that, there's so much about who you are as a person that you personally, Randa, bring to the stage because you're not scared of who Randa is and you're using yourself as your tools. I think sometimes we can get a little weighted down in methods, you know, like we get to a point like Stanislavski is the big, like, right? But it gets to a point in his acting books where he starts to contradict himself because there is a specific point where you can't really explain what to do, and analysis is great, but you do you, and I think being successful at that is great. And it's best to know your acting methods really well if you want to teach them. But as an artist, being your own artist, like someone could have tried to teach Picasso painting, but then he wouldn't be Picasso. That's a great line there. Does anybody, like, when we talk about how we use our own instruments or the way that we came into our artistry, Katie, do you have any sort of insights or like the way that you arrived at like your diversity? Because this is also a crazy thing about this group of people. I think everybody on this chat is a wider or broader type than what we typically think of as like, oh, this person is this type of person. And I think also everybody on this chat are the kind of artists and performers who bring a lot of themselves into their characters, who aren't afraid to do that. And I don't think that's a coincidence at all. But Katie, you also bring a lot of who you are into your acting methods. How did you kind of arrive at that? And do you have any similar words of wisdom, anything?
I think for me and my mindset, it's always about empathy. I think actors are very empathetic, and for me, I think that's why I want to give these characters a voice, is because I have great empathy for their story, whether it's a good story or not, whether they're the hero or the villain or whatever, they have their own story within the story. And so I just have a deep connection to things, and I'm a good observer of people in life in general. Like, I feel like I'm an observer in life. I tend to take a step back and watch what's happening and then choose what to do next, or like base whatever on that fact. So I think I've learned a lot of the method acting, like different techniques in college. I took what worked for me and what didn't. Like, I love sensory work, but sensory work only goes so far because you'll desensitize yourself, right? So like you have to take and pick and choose what works for you and what role and whatnot. And then honestly, I think it's just about being fearless a little bit, like letting go of who you are, letting go of expectation, trusting the people who are on stage with you and the director to tell you if you're like completely off track. And then do your research the show, research the time period, research the person if it's a real person, research like what was going on in that time period that would inform your decisions as that character. It's just a conglomerate of things, I think, that just, I love to play pretend. It boils down to, I love being someone else.
I love that idea of research, and that I think that's very much that like outside in rather than inside out kind of acting. I mean, I also just find research fun, and I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy music direction, is because it does involve a fair amount of research, at least the way I do it. Yeah.
So Randa, you mentioned your desire to eventually get a master's degree. I think that's really cool, really like interesting. Like where in your career do you think that you would be, and what do you think a master's degree would do for you outside of academics?
I think that's so difficult to say, especially right now with everything going on. But
Absolutely.
I think that prior to the shutdown, coming out of the tour, if I had left the tour, I think that my career could have maybe gone in like two kind of different ways. I could have either gone and probably done more tours maybe, or just like auditioned in the city, or I could maybe go back to academia and hone my skills a little more, and eventually age into what I will eventually embrace as my type, which is like momhood, which is I have no problem with that. It's hard for me to embrace that because one, I have no children, and two, I'm still 26 years old. But unfortunately, because I'm tall and I'm not stick thin, I often get cast a lot older.
You're preaching to the literal choir on this one.
Yes, I know
it's
that.
all of us.
That's
Paul
literally
included.
All of us are we are all considered old actors.
Yep.
And so I think that grad school, if I felt my career kind of like at a standstill in terms of like type, and I was like in this weird in between, I think grad school is a great way to bridge that gap, to help me be a better actor, and also to find the niche that will be me when I'm in my 30s.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting argument as far as women in theater and women in the arts go in general, because the way that typing works, you're either a teen or you're a mom. And there are now, thank God, more and more narratives that don't conform to this old type. And I think we're continually making more art and more theater, but the notion of type does get in the way of reality and good storytelling and diversity. So these stereotypes that we're catering to with a lot of these older narratives, and there's a lot of wiggle room in something like Shakespeare where you can place people into non-heteronormative, non-type-based, non-racial stereotype situations, still using these universal themes of war, love, loss, magic. Like all of these things exist within Shakespeare, and there's room to like put new things into it, but there's not room in musical theater. We're not at a point where like there are some things happening where we're playing with the themes in different pieces of musical theater, but it's not as well accepted on the whole. And I think the time has come. But this notion that you can't be in love if you're over a certain height, or if you look a particular way, you have to be a particular kind of character. As a casting director, that's something I tried to buck against. And we've talked about this a lot, but we're in a system where that is not always going to be supported. And you just as an artist, as an administrator, as someone who works to facilitate other people's artwork, it's one of my goals in life to make sure that I'm at least taking steps forward and pushing that wall as far as I can and still stay in the system. And we'll break the system later. That's why I'm wearing my beret today. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, because if you are talking about the only things that you have to bring, every character you play is you plus something minus something. If that plus something is always you have kids, it gets disheartening. The first time I played a mom of someone who was older than I was 18 years old. Katie, I think, has a very similar story. But yeah,
I've been married to a man in his 50s when I was 20. Yeah. I've played Yenta, who's old as dirt, when I was 25. So it just happens. It's a blast, though. Once you accept that it can still be fun.
My favorite roles were playing dads.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Webb in Our Town to an Emily who was older than me. But oh yeah.
I will say this. So in Fiddler, My normal track is a woman who is probably in her 30s, married, and with a child. But when I went on as a daughter, whenever I went on and I came out to the stage door and there was someone there, they would say, "Oh my gosh, it's one of the daughters." They didn't care that I was the tallest daughter, even though I was the second oldest. They didn't care that I was a foot taller than my mother. Once you put it out there, they got to believe it. Otherwise, they're going to leave it intermission. You know what I mean? Like, you don't go into a show hoping that the youngest daughter is the tallest daughter or whatever. The woman who plays Seitel currently is my height, so she's about 5'7", 5'8", and her first year, the first year of tour, she was in my track, and she went on as the second youngest Sprinza and was the tallest on stage as the second youngest. So I mean, like, you just got to be like, all right, well, Sprinza had a growth spurt, I guess. So once you're there, there's no going back. So I don't see why we need to continue to cast in this mold when that is what happens no matter what. So
yeah, people accept it.
Yeah.
I think that, like, I'm gonna like show one of my crazy issues. One of the things about myself that I had trouble accepting when I was a really young person, I had no question in my mind that I was a beautiful princess. You know, like there was no question to me that I was lovely and that I was like a good kid. Like I had no doubts. And then as I got older, I started to doubt the fact that I'm a beautiful person. And it happened in a lot of crazy ways. But like bullying or people telling you why you're not good enough, or even adults making comments that like erode at your like ability to see your own beauty. So I got to a point, like, you guys know me. I got to a point where it's like, oh, okay, I am not an attractive person. It's like, I can look in the mirror and see that, like, you know, I'm okay, but beautiful is not who I am. Yeah. So that was somewhere in my teens. And I was like, okay, this is how this is, but I still wanted to be beautiful. And being on stage was one of those places where I could be perceived to be beautiful by people. And I knew that when I was in that room, if people were accepting the narrative, if they were believing that I was the most beautiful girl in town, that in that moment, it was partially true. You know, like if they could accept it, then that could be true about me. So as I went through my career, I got to this place where I was really, like, truly did not believe that I was a beautiful person at all. And I did this book. Like, I love self-help books, particularly ones that are like deep in psychology. I did this book and I had this epiphany moment. The person who wrote the book had you write down 5 people who you were either secretly jealous of or that you consider to be heroes. And then you had to write down something essential about those people. Like, there was this list of words. It was like creative, artistic, what were some of the other ones? Like detail-oriented. But there were all of these qualities. They were like, if you were going to distill this person down to one thing, what is that thing? So I decided to do one list of heroes and one list of people I was secretly jealous of. And I realized that I had like secondary things for all of the people. So like Carol Burnett, right, one of my heroes, the things that I loved about her are like the things that I thought were her essential nature and not the things that I admired necessarily, but I thought she was creative and beautiful. That was it. So then I got to my second person. It was Kristen Chenoweth. And I was like, gifted and beautiful. So I went through the whole list, and all of my heroes had a secondary of being beautiful people as something that I admired about them. Either they had like a style that was an enviable style, like there was some element to it where they created beauty. And all 5 of the people I was secretly jealous of, I was secretly jealous that they were perceived to be beautiful people, and I was not. So I got down to it. So I turned the page in this book. This is such a long story, and I'm so sorry. But I turned the page in this book, and she said, if you look at your list, like you've selected a word that you think is your word, and I picked creative as my word. off of the list. This is the word that is essentially me, creative. And you can see that, right? Like, doesn't that make sense? She said, if you look at your list of heroes and your list of people you're jealous of, and there's a word that occurs more than 4 times, that is who you are. Like, essentially. And I had to accept that at my essence, the person that I was beautiful. That the reason I wanted to play these roles on stage, the reason it was so hard to not be Betty Haynes anymore at the end of White Christmas, was that I felt like I was myself. And I was allowed to be authentically who I was, because Betty is beautiful. It is not disputed. Everybody knows it. And it was hard to say goodbye to her because I had to go back to denying who I was as a person. So I think there is something to be said about this, being able to play who you essentially are. To be like, it's hard to let go of these things that you love about yourself when you're playing these roles, because we play these roles because there is something about them that is us. And it's hard to let go of those things because you have to go back to reality. But I beg you all, don't. Like, accept that this is essentially who you are. But yeah, that's my story about beauty. And I'll step off my soapbox and never speak again for the rest of this table talk.
No!
I almost cried, Katie. I almost cried. I reined it in.
You almost made me cry.
Oh, it's Amber today. It's Amber this week.
Sorry.
I loved it. It was beautiful. Just you.
I don't get, see? I love it. I now don't get an interview episode because I hijacked Randa.
Whatever. I'm here. I'm here to listen. I'm telling you, another acting method of mine, the most important person on stage is the other person. So I'm more than happy that I heard that story during what was supposed to be my time. Like, that's what I want.
Oh, I love that. So I get my question now. So this is one of those, like, the hats you wear kind of questions. So I get asked this a lot, and it's a hard question to quantify. And I have like different versions of it because I'm a person who like plays instruments and does sewing and designing and stuff, like, as not necessarily secondary skills, but as things I love, right? So I know that you have the kind of skills and the kind of mind that doesn't just love performing. But what do you consider, like, when you're talking about your own self-definition as an artist, what do you consider yourself to be? Like, would you say that you're a singer-actor, an actor-singer, like a creative, and then a performer? Like, where do you place yourself? What's your Venn diagram look like?
Well, I think that this is probably rooted in my teachings from college, but they were always talking about how to be a well-rounded theater person. And I think that I'm just a theater person. You know, I just I love everything about theater. Every element I think is important and beautiful. And I don't think you can have a full theater experience without having every piece of it. So I would say I'm a well-rounded theater person. So you did it, professors. You did it.
I love that. I love the self-definition of just like being a theater person, because that's like, I feel like that's all of us in this group too, for the most part. Because like, I have literally done every job, I think, in theater except for lighting design, which I've never done.
You could do it though.
I'd have to take some time with it, but you know, I could do it. I just choose not to right now. But I've literally answered phones and done season ticket subscription work. I've done like grant writing, obviously arts administrations, design of all kinds, production assistant, terrible, clean the toilets stuff. Like, as long as I was in the building, I was happy. So I think I love that. I'm stealing that answer next time someone asks me. What about you, Katie? In your Venn diagram, like, what do you consider yourself to be?
Probably a singer, no, probably an actor, singer, dancer, educator.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, I just think my acting has always been my strongest suit throughout my time and in my career and stuff. And I have to work really hard for my singing to be good, because I struggle with rhythm. Theory is not my strong suit. Sight reading is not my strong suit. So I work really hard to get it right. I don't always succeed, but I have lovely humans in my corner who always help me, whether it's to give me notes because they're the vocal captain, or to correct me because they're my music director, or just a little helpful hint because they are my regular director. All these lovely humans have helped me on my path. Yeah, so it's just something I have to work at, but I love a lot, and it's progressed a lot. I'm not expected to be a dancer for my type, but I love dancing, and I love educating, and I think I've always loved educating. I think up until probably within the last couple of years, I looked at it as a side gig, right? Like it's something that I love, but I don't want to do full time because I'm not a teacher. I'm not educated to be a teacher.
That doesn't mean you're not a teacher, Katie.
Sure,
you're a very good educator.
We talked a lot about that this summer, Amber. I'm coming to terms with things.
Okay.
But like, yeah.
Do I need to make you make a list?
Yeah, probably.
Sure.
Therapy time? What? No, but really, I mean, I think that the past couple of years have really opened my eyes to like, it's not just something that I love on the side. It's something I'm passionate about, because I want the next generation of us to not have to deal with the things that we've had to deal with, to know that there is someone out there who is going to fight their battles alongside them and to lift them up when they need to be lifted, which is something that I really, really hounded our kids about this summer. It was just like how great they are, and like, don't let the world bring you down because it's crazy out there. But this is our safe place. This is where you can come and be built up. So that's a passion that I am discovering how to make into the next career step.
I love it. Paul, how about you? What do you consider yourself to be?
You know, it's funny because like this is where I started and not really what I'm doing regularly, but the first thing that I consider myself is an actor. Everyone, like we've said, I mean, if someone were to ask me, I'd say I'm a theater professional, because of the varied things that I do, but and also because no one knows what a music assistant is. But little known and rarely discussed composer Stephen Sondheim says that playwrights are just actors who work with words, and composers are just playwrights who work with notes. And whenever I'm writing music, or even when I'm music directing, my impulse has to come from an acting place. If I am conducting a show, whether I wrote it or not, I have to be able to know the emotional baggage, for lack of a better word, of a scene that I'm underscoring, or a song, what's happening, so that we don't end up with, I don't know how to love him, or whatever it is. That it all comes back to, like Randa was talking about, finding the truth and finding what is what's the emotional truth of the moment. And that's, I think, sort of that's what music is, right? It's just emotional truth in a more quantifiable form. So I'm an actor. That's first and foremost, I think, where I come from as a theater professor.
I love that. I love that that's the root of your tree.
Yeah.
A tree with many branches.
Go on.
Stop. Oh, well, that is, the bulk of our Table Talk episode for this week, episode 23? 3? 4?
4? We don't know anymore.
This is number 3 for me, so.
Well, then, true episode 3. Yeah, the rest of it was just our out-of-town tryout before this.
Warm up.
I'm joking.
Randa, thank you so much for being in the hot seat today. That was great. I think, am I having an internet issue?
Just
Can
a
you guys hear
little.
me? Just a little
just-
bit?
You're good.
You're back. You're good. You're good.
Check. Any final thoughts, Randa, for today? Any advice for the kids?
I didn't get to talk too much about my undergrad experience, but so don't let anyone tell you that you need to do one specific thing, because I think that all of us can attest to the importance of having your hands in many different areas of expertise in the theater community.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. We should have talked about what your undergrad experience and all of that stuff. We'll get it. Like, I think there's an episode in the future about all of our undergraduate collegiate experiences, because I think, yeah, that might be our season finale. How about that?
Sweet.
Because next week we'll do either Akira, if Akira is back with us, we'll interview Akira next week, or we'll interview Katie next week. And then we'll have 2 more episodes in the season before we take our season hiatus for the holidays, I think. So I know, before season 2. But yes, thank you guys so much for joining us today. As always, thank you, Goshen Noon Kiwanis, for helping support Goshen Theater Drama Club. We couldn't do what we do without you. We're in the process right now of trying to determine dates and plans for our 2021 summer program. Katie, we need to talk, get together and have a meeting sometime in the next couple weeks.
Right.
But we're in the process of doing that. So keep an eye on the GoshenTheater.com website for more information there. Also check out our Facebook page for up-to-the-minute information about events. And rentals. You have a birthday coming up, you want to rent the Goshen Theater, show a movie? Come on down. It's a great, beautiful place. I think everybody here on the chat has been in, except Katie, you haven't seen it fully renovated.
I haven't. But I'm just a quick drive away. So
exactly. Sometime soon you should come on down. But yes, join us next week. We're going to be doing another one of our interview series next week. Either we'll be interviewing Miss Katie Barnes, or we will be interviewing Akira Watanabe next episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Yeah, that's about all we've got to do. Any final thoughts, Miss Katie?
Randa, I never brag on you enough. So I just feel like I need to take one more moment, because no, legit, you're one of the most talented humans I know. And I'm so grateful to have had the chance to work with you. When I think of other performers that I've worked with that I look up to and want to emulate, you're one of them. So I love you so much. I'm so glad you're here on Table Talks to share our time together.
I feel honored to call you a friend as well. Paul, final thoughts?
No, Katie literally just took exactly what I was going to say. Just hire Randa Meierhenry for everything. You'll never be sorry that you did, and work with her any chance you get, because she's truly incredible.
She's dynamite. Well, thank you guys for tuning in this week. Thank you, Randa, for being the subject of our episode. Randa Meierhenry, a portrait in talent.
And now I'm going to go deflate my giant head that you've given me.
Thank you all for tuning in this week. Join us next week for another one of our interview series. And if you have any questions or comments, send those to Facebook or comment on our video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.